Life moves on, and after a short period of working on quality at Mather and Platt, or Wormholes as they became, doing goods Edward inspection on electrical work, I got a job with Ericsson's. Limited knowledge from what I gleaned in Ferranti credit phone actually was one of the main reasons I got the job, because main part of the job was surveying sites for positions for telecom equipment and power and stuff like that on a much larger scale. The theory of doing the job was the same. So it was like a step up into telecommunications and a development in the fact that I was able to do site surveys, having spent 20 years in a factory, not going anywhere apart from a few site visits and a few visits to suppliers at the very end of the time there on credit phone, to actually be able to go out and do a job where you actually toured the country, you know, doing site surveys at remote places up in Aberdeen and Edinburgh, big city exchanges, was unbelievable. You know, I saw parts of the country that I would never see, or you would never go. Places, little out-the-about places, a place called Mousewold and places like that where, you know, you'd never come across these places out in Dumfries and up in Ayrshire and Scottish Islands. And eventually, as the company slimmed down, we got what they called outsourced to a company called EXI, who basically just took various sections of the business that Ericsson's didn't want to keep within the framework of the Ericsson organisation. So they were virtually, I would call it, subcontractors. The job didn't change, the environment didn't change, the management changed slightly, but as the company shrank, the number of people who were competent enough to do certain parts of the job dwindled. And in the end, you ended up doing jobs from Huddersfield to Guatemala, would you believe? Chile, all over Europe. All I can say really is it was a dream job. But like all dream jobs, they come to an end. And unfortunately, EXI met a similar fate to Ferranti's, in that as the work slowed down, the money dried up. The competitiveness of the nature of the business was that there was maybe 2 or 3 companies do the same job, and they were probably marginally better positioned than EXI, and EXI is no longer. After that, I had various jobs that were, you know, nowhere near as good as that. When you look back at your time working, when I started at Ferranti as an apprentice at 16, I never would have believed that at some point in my life I'd be travelling the world doing a job. And when you've been in a factory environment for so long, you feel privileged, really. Because if I would have stayed in Ferranti's, if they would have still, you know, I could have done all my working life there, which is not unusual, to be honest, in the Ferranti's. Ferranti's had a lot of what they call lifers. You know, some people I can remember started at 14, and not many, but retired at 65 and spent the whole of the working life in a factory environment, which in essence of job security and the fact that, you know, the limitations of what you could do and what abilities you had and the opportunities that came along was probably not too bad for people. I mean, you get people who work down mines all their lives and various other jobs where you're basically stuck in one environment, but just a lucky break and getting made redundant was like taking me into a different world. The recollections of factory life was routine. Everything was very, very, very routine. You clocked on, you got a break at a certain time, you had your dinner at a certain time, you had your afternoon break at a certain time, and then you clocked off at a certain time, which when you get outside of that environment, you don't believe how sort of regimented you were. But that was the way factory life was, and if you've never experienced anything different, I suppose that routine is the way that you feel comfortable. Because apart from a few people complaining about things, there's a lot of people, and the same for like Mather and Platt and aerospace. There was a lot of people who spent the majority of their working lives in one environment. And when you get out and you know, the first site survey I did was Shap in the Lake District. I couldn't believe that you just was going out to do a job in an environment like the Lake District, where my normal routine was I clocked on at 7:45. I did my work in the morning. You got told exactly what to do. You knew what you were doing all week because you knew what jobs were there and what jobs were coming in. You had a job card that you booked on. You had a time to do the job, which was piecework. And everything that revolved about money was about piecework. And you've seen violent arguments about times to do jobs. And people used to get, you know, what they used to call rate fixers were probably the most hated people you could possibly get in most jobs. There was always somebody throwing banging, shouting, chucking a card around, you know, because the times were obviously time set so the company could make money on the job, but it was very difficult to make a bonus if it was too tight. So, you know, there was that element of control and that element of when you went in the morning, you probably knew exactly what you were going to do for the rest of the month, because everything was repetitious in the fact that the same jobs came in cycles. And if you had a different job, which sometimes jobs came in from experimental and other departments were too busy, you know, it was like a bit of a novelty, to be honest with you. And I think, you know, people actually felt really good that they were doing something different or something that sort of enhanced the day. The other big thing about was a canteen facility where you could get a 3-course lunch for, you know, about 2 and 6 or whatever it was, that was subsidised by the company. You know, which all those things now, with all those what you could call a perk, there's nothing like that these days. Every place I've been into, apart from the odd BT building over the years, there's no food, there's no canteen, there's nothing really. But that was part and parcel of working in a factory. All the big factories had canteen, restaurant facilities. In fact, Ferranti's staff canteen was silver service, which, you know, even in this day and age, you know, you'd be hard stretched to find a company that would provide a silver service restaurant for any level of staff. Even maybe the managing director might get that, but certainly not down the ranks.